Thing that certainly may come up this evening, the fact that Secretary of State Hillary Clinton is now saying the buck stops with her when it comes to security at the U.S. diplomatic mission in Benghazi, Libya. You know the story. U.S. Ambassador Chris Stevens, 3 other Americans died on that attack back on September 11th. And I want to bring in Fareed Zakaria here to talk about this. You know he's the host. Fareed Zakaria, GPS, columnist for Time Magazine. So, Fareed, nice to see you back on the show. I've been challenging lawmakers, I've been challenging surrogates on what the administration knew when it came to Benghazi, how they reacted, and Hillary Clinton has been kind of quiet until now, and here she is the night before the debate in Lima, Peru, says what she does to a number of networks, including us, but this is all politics, is it not?
It is about politics, but it doesn't change the fact that what she said is probably quite accurate. Look, what we're talking about here is whether a request for security that came from the consulate in Benghazi, this is one of the 275 diplomatic outposts the United States has, whether that went up to the White House. The answer is obviously no. In fact, I would say it's obviously also true that it didn't even get to the Secretary of State. This was probably dealt with by an assistant secretary or an undersecretary. But Hillary Clinton is making the point that to the extent that she runs the State Department, all 60,000 people, she is responsible and takes responsibility for it. But it did not go to the White House. And so it is, in fact, true that they didn't know that there were these requests. I think that's a separate issue, of course, from whether or not the White House handled the crisis after the ambassador was killed, whether or not they were entirely honest, whether they just didn't know what had happened. All those, as you know, in a sense, these are 2 separate issues. Crisis management of what happened after the ambassador was killed and the events leading up to the violence and the request for security. On that piece of it, I think Hillary Clinton is being quite accurate.
Okay. Libya certainly will come up tonight. I want to move past Libya, though, to the Obama administration policies towards Syria and the Middle East. And to do that, I want to quote Florida Republican Senator Marco Rubio, writing on CNN.com, criticizing Obama's empty rhetoric, his words, in support of the Syrian opposition. So here's what he writes. This is why Iran is more deeply than ever involved in arming and providing financial support to al-Assad, why Russia makes a mockery of Obama's reset by supplying currency for al-Assad, and why Russia and China predictably continue to stifle U.S., Arab, and European efforts at the United Nations. When you hear that, criticism, Fareed, is it fair?
I think this is purely campaign rhetoric. Look, the Syrian situation is very complicated. It's not entirely clear how to handle it. It's a very, very sad, tragic humanitarian catastrophe. It's causing regional instability. But what does Senator Rubio propose? Well, you know, when Vice President Biden challenged Congressman Ryan at the debate, do you want U.S. intervention there? If you don't want U.S. intervention, what should we do? Do you want to try and get some kind of sanctions, embargo, no-fly zones? Well, for all of that, you need other countries to help you, which means you need either the Arab League to sanction it or request it, as they did in Libya, or the UN to do so, which they did in Libya. Or are you saying we want to have a unilateral American no-fly zone, which means the United States alone shoots down planes and things like that? You know, when you push people and ask them what is it that they would do different from what current policy is, you don't get a lot of specifics. You get a lot of hot air and you get this kind of rhetorical stuff. But the truth is our options are pretty, Syria is the land of lousy options. It's not clear what we could do that's very different from what the Obama administration is doing.
On either side, we heard, Mitt Romney at VMI talking about how Syrian rebels should be armed, but there were no specifics as far as who should then arm them. So, again, Syria, as you point out, it's tough. It's tough.
Well, and he says that they should be armed, not by us, but by others. And as long as we can be sure they're not radicals. Well, how do you figure that out in the midst of a civil war?
All good points. But while I have you, I do want to talk a little bit about this your special coming up Sunday. Talk to me, Fareed Zakaria, about green power. What are you looking at?
Well, what we were looking at is, the candidates both want energy independence. And what's strange is we're sort of going to get it, but almost despite what's going on in the politics, no matter who's president, the United States is on the verge of this huge energy boom, which is, it's this new revolution, this technological revolution. We were expecting it in solar and wind. Instead, we've got it in shale and deep water oil. And it's going to be this enormous boom for the United States. What we argue in this special is that should be the bridge technology to get eventually to the cleaner, greener future that we've all been looking for. And we look at a lot of countries around the world, from Denmark to France. Believe it or not, France gets 75% of its electricity with zero carbon emissions because they use nuclear power. So we try to look at best practices around the world.
It is called Global Lessons, the GPS Roadmap for Powering America. Airs Sunday night, 8 o'clock Eastern, right here on CNN. Fareed Zakaria, thank you. Always a pleasure.
Pleasure.